All right, let's see if we can do this. Let's see if you're with me this morning. Are you ready? Yeah. Nevertheless. Oh, I love you. Yes. Nevertheless. Let's do this. Do you remember a few years ago when that phrase became popular? Yes, you do. The United States had a hearing, the Senate had a hearing to confirm Jeff Sessions as U.S. Attorney General. But Elizabeth Warren objected, delivering a speech where she quoted a statement from former Senator Ted Kennedy, and then she read a written statement by Coretta Scott King, the wife of Martin Luther King Jr., and a leader of the civil rights movement in her own right. Both statements claimed that when Sessions was an attorney, he showed indifference towards civil rights laws, and he tried to stall the ability for African Americans to vote in his district. As Warren read the statements from Coretta Scott King, some men in the Senate interrupted her, but nevertheless, Warren persisted in reading King's statement. Eventually, Mitch McConnell forced a vote to silence Warren. The vote went along party lines, and the Republican senators silenced her. After the vote, McConnell stated, "Senator Warren was warned. She was given an explanation. Nevertheless, she persisted." Although McConnell's statement was meant to put Warren in her place, it totally backfired. The phrase, "nevertheless, she persisted," became a rallying cry for women throughout the world who are breaking through barriers of patriarchy that has silenced or ignored women for far too long. Nevertheless, she persisted. Despite the fact that the Christian tradition claims that women and men are equally created in the image of God, women are still barred from preaching in the largest Christian denomination, the Roman Catholic Church, not to mention the fact that women are barred from preaching in many Protestant denominations too. Fortunately, women throughout the centuries have persisted in their God-given gift of teaching and preaching in the church. And you can be proud to know that the United Church of Christ was the first Christian denomination to ordain a woman to preach in a church. Why? Because throughout her life, men told Antoinette Brown that she would never be allowed to preach. Nevertheless, Antoinette Brown persisted, and in 1853, the UCC ordained her to be the first woman pastor, and that is your denomination. And throughout give it up. And throughout the 19th century, women like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony struggled for a woman's right to vote, while they were repeatedly told that it would never happen. Susan B. Anthony declared, "Hey, let's just give men their rights and nothing more, and let's give women their rights and nothing less." In an act of non-violent civil disobedience, she went to a polling booth, demanded to vote, and was arrested. Nevertheless, Susan B. Anthony and countless other women persisted in their pursuit of justice, and eventually, women won the right to vote in 1920. Unfortunately, throughout human history, women have often had to persist in their pursuit of justice, and we see that today in the story that Jesus tells in his parable. Jesus tells a parable about our need to pray always and to not lose heart in the face of injustice. Do you ever feel like there are so many problems in this world that it is impossible to keep up? They may be personal problems, they may be cultural problems, they may be environmental problems, and the list just goes on and on and on, and it's easy to lose heart. Jesus and his disciples came up against a similar problem. They were conquered and occupied by the Roman Empire, the biggest empire the world had ever seen. To make matters worse, the political, religious, and economic establishment of Jesus' culture largely worked with the oppressive Roman Empire. What use was it to pray about their situation? The Jews of Jesus' day began to lose heart. Many fell into despair because the situation was so enormously oppressive. But Jesus taught them to pray, to not lose heart, and to persist. He told them a parable about a widow who persistently fought for justice against a powerful and unjust judge. In Jesus' day, a widow was one of the most vulnerable members of their society. In a patriarchal society, a husband protected his wife both financially and physically. When a woman became a widow, she was often left destitute and seemingly powerless. At least those in power wanted women to think that they were powerless. In the parable, Jesus talked about a woman who refused to think of herself as powerless. She refused to lose heart in the face of injustice. As an unjust judge continued to ignore the widow's plea for justice, nevertheless, she persisted in her demands. In the ancient world, women were supposed to know their place and keep silent. But this woman refused to accept the fate this man tried to force upon her. You might say that Jesus was an early feminist because he consistently elevated women as models of faith. Few teachers in the ancient world would tell a story about a widow as an example of faith, but Jesus did. Jesus always flips the patriarchal expectations upside down. The man in the story is shown to be a bad model of faith, while the woman is the superior model of faith. She didn't lose heart in the face of the enormous injustice that confronted her. Instead, she persisted in fighting for justice. Jesus ends his parable by asking if, when he comes back, would he find anyone on earth with faith like that widow's faith? And from the evidence around us, I think it's pretty clear that if Jesus came back today, he would find faith on earth just like that widow's. For example, Greta Thunberg continues to stare climate change in the face and warns us about the damage we are doing to God's good earth. Like the unjust judge, many powerful men have tried to shame her into silence, to make her think that she is powerless. But Greta isn't having any of it, because nevertheless, Greta persists in her demands for climate justice, and thank God for her persistence. And just this last week, we saw a picture of Nancy Pelosi. Did you see this picture? At a meeting in the White House. She is the only woman at a table full of men. She stands as she points her finger at the president, and she demands a more just world. And you noticed all the generals were just like this. Because they know. The White House released that picture in an effort to shame and silence Pelosi. Nevertheless, she persists. Instead of shaming her, that picture has encouraged her and women throughout the world to rise up against the patriarchy that it continues to try to silence them. And of course, there are many famous women and politicians who are faced with injustice. Nevertheless, they persist. But just the same, there are many less famous women who have faith to persist too. I think of women in my family. I think of women who are my friends, and I think of women of this church who volunteer at food pantries, at Clackamas Women's Center, help read to children at Billquist Elementary School. I think of single moms in our congregation who are doing their best to care for their children. I think of women who are delivering food to members who are sick, teaching our children, volunteering at the church school and teaching our children about God's love during Sunday school, and volunteering countless hours to make sure that the church's programs and fundraisers run smoothly as possible. All of the women and some of the men of our church inspire me. I'm glad you laughed at that. I'm glad that worked. Okay. But as I conclude, I hope it's okay for me to lift up one person, if I may, because this person might be the person in my life who inspires me to persist the most. And this person is Bernie. Bernie is in her 80s, and because of a difficult and painful family situation, she finds herself not only as a grandmother, not only as a great-grandmother, but as a mother figure to a great-granddaughter. Bernie has a complicated life full of difficulties, but Bernie is also full of joy. She is honest about her emotions and her struggles, and through it all, nevertheless, Bernie persists with a quick smile and a sense of humor. She is one of my greatest models of faith in this world. And so if Jesus were to come back today and ask if there is anyone on earth with the faith of the woman in his parable, I would say to Jesus, you go directly to the women at Clackamas United Church of Christ, because there you will find great faith. And pay close attention to Bernie, because in her, you will find faith and love and hope. May it be so with all of us today and forevermore. Amen. Hi, everyone. This is Adam Erickson, reminding you that no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome at Clackamas United Church of Christ. We are located at 15303 Southeast Webster Road in Milwaukee, Oregon. We are so glad that you found this podcast. All of our podcasts will always be free, but we rely on the financial support of our members and our friends. If this podcast meant something to you, you can help us out in two ways. You can share this podcast with someone you think might be interested. You can also help us financially by donating to the wonderful missions we have here at Clackamas United Church of Christ. To do so, you can go to our Facebook page, our website, or our YouTube channel, and click on the Donate Here button. Our worship services start at 10:30 on Sundays, except for during the summer months when we start at 10 o'clock. If you would like more information on our church, you can visit our website at c-ucc.org. You can also reach out to me through email at adam@c-ucc.org. Until next time, grace and peace be with you.